A barefoot priest stands in the shifting sand of the Sinai desert. His white linen tunic is heavily stained dark across the chest. We look at the 5 major sacrifices laid out in the opening chapters, and we see a dark system of appeasement. You see this exact same verb used later in Psalm 51, when a broken King David begs God, "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean." He is asking God to chat at him, to de-sin him. That grammar changes everything. Watch the physical movement of the priest. He slaughters the young bull. He catches the warm blood in his basin, but he does not touch the worshiper with the blood. He does not sprinkle the guilty man. If this offering was simply about punishing the sinner, the action would center on the man. It does not. The priest turns his back on the worshiper. He walks to the massive bronze altar. He dips his finger into the bowl. He smears the thick, dark red liquid onto the 4 rising horns of the bronze grate. If the sin was committed by a priest, the ritual moves deeper. He walks inside the dark tent. The air is heavy with incense. He stands before the thick, woven veil separating heaven and earth. He splashes the blood 7 times in front of the gold furniture. The chatat is not a penalty inflicted on a broken person. It is a detergent applied to a contaminated room. The blood acts as an industrial spiritual disinfectant. It scrubs the sacred space clean. It absorbs the toxic spill of human rebellion so that the presence of God does not have to evacuate the camp. We assume this is just how ancient people bribed a volatile, angry deity to leave them alone. It de-sins the sanctuary so God can stay. The altar is wiped clean. The pollution is removed. The holy space is safe again. But wiping down the altar does not pay back a stolen debt. What happens when your failure doesn't just pollute the sanctuary, but defrauds the person sleeping in the tent next to yours? We understand the mathematics of theft. When someone breaches a contract, embezzles funds, or destroys a neighbor's property, a simple emotional apology does not balance the ledger. A modern court of law demands restitution. The broken window must be paid for. The stolen money must be returned. The deficit must be filled. Leviticus chapter 5 introduces an offering that operates entirely within this rigid legal and commercial framework. If a person deals falsely with their neighbor in a matter of a deposit, or through robbery, or if they find something lost and lie about it under oath, the contagion of sin has now crossed over into the realm of economic damage. The sanctuary might be polluted, but the neighbor's ledger is also bleeding. The English Bible translates the remedy for this as the guilt offering or the reparation offering. But the word used in Leviticus 5, verse 15, is the Hebrew asham. It appears throughout the Old Testament, legal codes, but if you look closer at the Hebrew words framing these rituals, at the physical movement of the worshiper, at exactly what happens to the blood, and its primary meaning extends far beyond the internal, psychological feeling of remorse. The root of asham means to be liable, to incur a concrete debt, or to owe a specific penalty. It is not a word for a troubled conscience. It is an accounting term for an unbalanced scale. That legal distinction changes the entire sequence of the ritual. Before the worshiper can ever approach the priest, before they can ever bring the flawless ram from the flock, the mathematics of restitution must be satisfied. The text commands that the guilty party must restore what they took in full and then add exactly 1/5 to it, a 20% penalty. You can almost hear the cold silver shekels clinking against the bronze weights of the merchant's scale. You can feel the heavy thud of the returned property being placed back onto the defrauded neighbor's table. Only after the neighbor is made whole, plus 20%, can the ram be slaughtered at the altar. The asham is not a spiritual apology. It is a forensic audit. God is fiercely protective of the human community. He refuses to accept a religious ritual from a man who is actively defrauding the person. Sleeping in the tent next door, you cannot buy peace with heaven while leaving your brother in a deficit. The vertical relationship with the Creator is permanently tethered to the horizontal relationship with the neighbor. The debt must be paid in both directions. You start to see something the primitive reading completely misses. The sacrificial system is not a transaction to buy God's tolerance. The silver balances the neighbor's ledger. The ram balances the sanctuary's ledger. 5 sacrifices, 5 specific mechanisms for surrender: tribute, peace, purification, and restitution. But underneath all of them, uniting the ascending smoke and the broken bread, is the central, pulsing engine of the entire tabernacle system. To understand how any of this works, and to understand what happens centuries later on a Roman cross, you have to understand the specific, terrifying physics of the blood itself. The priest stands ankle-deep in the hot sand. The bronze basin in his hands is heavy. The liquid inside is still warm, dark red, and smelling sharply of copper and iron. He walks toward the heat radiating from the blazing coals. He dips his fingers into the bowl. He smears the liquid across the 4 rising horns of the altar. He pours the remainder at the base, the thick fluid pooling in the dust. To modern eyes, this looks like a horror story. But in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11, God pulls back the curtain on the mechanics of this terrifying engine. He tells the people exactly how the system operates. For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. The word translated atonement in your English Bible is the Hebrew kippur. You likely recognize it from Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. It is a technology for surviving His presence. The real question of Leviticus isn't, why is God so obsessed with blood? It is this, but its primary root is the verb kafar, and its literal, physical meaning has nothing to do with paying off a debt, enduring a penalty, or suffering a punishment. It means to cover, to wipe over, to paint, to smear, or to seal. The very first time this root appears in the ancient Hebrew text is thousands of years before the tabernacle is ever built. It is in Genesis chapter 6, verse 14. A catastrophic flood is coming to wipe out a violent world, and God tells Noah to build a massive wooden ark. He commands Noah to kafar the boat with pitch, to coat it, to paint the wood with a thick, waterproof resin, sealing the vessel so the dark waters of death cannot break through the hull. That root changes everything. When you stand in the courtyard and watch the priest wiping the warm blood across the bronze furniture, you are not watching him pay a violent bribe to a wrathful deity. The blood is not a price extracted by an angry God. It is a protective seal provided by a merciful Father. God explicitly says, I have given it to you. He provides the covering. The blood on the altar acts exactly like the pitch on Noah's Ark. It seals the holy space. It coats the architecture of the sanctuary. How does a fractured, impure human being safely touch the source of all life? This was not a theological metaphor for the ancient Israelites. Insulating the radioactive, life-giving presence of the Creator from the toxic corruption of the creature. The mechanics of Kippur are the mechanics of substitutionary covering. Life covers death. Purity covers pollution. Innocence covers fracture. Without the covering, the camp would be instantly consumed by the sheer weight of God's unmediated perfection. But beneath the covering, the people are safe. Beneath the covering, the gap between heaven and earth is bridged. The fire can burn the tribute. The bread can be broken. The peace can hold. For 1,500 years, this complex cycle of blood, fire, flour, and salt repeats day after day. It is a relentless, exhausting rhythm, animal after animal, grain after grain, ascending in thick smoke just to keep the heavens open and the camp secure. The Levitical system creates a physical vocabulary for proximity, but it is a temporary language. The blood of a bull is only a shadow. It takes a Friday afternoon on a skull-shaped hill outside Jerusalem for all 5 ancient fires to converge into a single, permanent event. We look at a Roman crucifixion and we see an empire executing a peasant. We see splintered wood. We see cold iron nails near stone. We hear the labored breathing of a man suffocating in the dry Judean heat. To a first-century Hebrew mind, the cross is not random tragedy. It is the complete, simultaneous fulfillment of all 5 sacrificial mechanisms. For 1,500 years, The Israelites brought the sacrifice to the altar of God. They had a terrifying reality on their hands. The creator of the cosmos had just moved into their neighborhood. But on this limestone hill, the directional flow of the entire sacrificial system reverses. God does not wait inside the tent for the human payment. The Olah is fulfilled, a life totally surrendered. The Mincha is fulfilled, a man crushed like grain. The Shelamim is fulfilled. The peace offering is complete. The Chadad is fulfilled. The sin offering. The Asham is fulfilled. The guilt offering. Jesus is not just the high priest officiating the ancient ritual. He is the blood on the altar. The crushed wheat. The roasted meat shared. The cross is the architecture of Leviticus, operating at maximum capacity. All 5 ancient requirements are satisfied. The gap is permanently closed. The smoke clears. But what happens when you realize your hands are completely empty? Picture a man standing at the edge of the Israelite camp, watching the thick column of smoke rise from the bronze altar. He is destitute. He has no flawless bull in a pen. He has no flock of sheep. He does not have the silver shekels to buy a ram from a merchant. All he has is the heavy realization of his own fracture, the weight of his own failure, and completely empty hands. He hears the loud bleating of the rich men's livestock at the entrance of the tent. He smells the roasting fat. He knows the sanctuary is holy, and he knows he is not. A pillar of swirling fire and dense cloud sat right in the middle of their camp. God was not distant. He was terrifyingly close. If this system were built like the pagan religions of the ancient Near East, this man would be permanently excluded from the presence of the divine. You do not approach a king without a costly tribute. But hidden deep inside the legal codes of Leviticus chapter 5, there is a staggering concession. God tells Moses that if a person cannot afford a sheep, they can bring 2 turtle doves. And if they are so poor that they cannot even afford 2 birds, they can bring 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour. Think about the theological weight of that detail. For a sin offering, an offering fundamentally built on the mechanics of blood and substitution, God allows the poorest Israelite to bring crushed wheat. The creator of the cosmos intentionally alters the physics of the sanctuary so that the destitute are not left outside the camp. The sacrifice is not a toll booth demanding an impossible fee. It is a merciful door swinging wide open for the bankrupt. If you are in a season where you feel like you have absolutely nothing to bring to God, you need to sit with this ancient provision. We live in a culture that measures human worth by capacity, by output, and by what we can bring to the table. We assume God operates on the exact same ledger. We think we need to clean ourselves up, amass a flawless record of moral victories. He is pure, uncorrupted, radioactive life. And to step into that kind of absolute purity while carrying the contagion of human sin, human death, and human corruption, and present a perfectly managed life before we can safely step into his presence. We stand at the edge of the camp, looking at the fire, convinced we cannot afford the proximity. But the God of Leviticus does not demand what you do not have. He accepts the flour. He accepts the empty hands. Because, ultimately, as the writer of Hebrews makes clear, you were never the one providing the blood anyway. The entire system was always pointing forward to a Friday afternoon when the king would pay his own tribute, settle his own ledger, and de-sin his own sanctuary. You do not have to carry the heavy basin of blood. You only have to walk into the courtyard. But maybe the most staggering thing about this ancient book is not found in the individual details of the flour, the salt, or the doves. It is what happens when you step back and watch all 5 fires burn at exactly the same time. An unblemished animal is entirely surrendered to the heat of the fire, and a pillar of smoke ascends to bridge heaven and earth. A handful of crushed wheat and salt is thrown onto the burning coals, and the exhausting sweat of human labor becomes a holy tribute. A heavy portion of roasted meat is pulled apart in the desert dust, and the creator of the cosmos sits at the table. Meant instantaneous destruction. The gap between them and God was not spatial. It was moral. It was ontological, to eat with the creature. Warm blood is smeared thick across the bronze horns of the altar, and the sacred sanctuary is scrubbed entirely clean of our airborne corruption. Cold silver shekels are carefully weighed out on the merchant's scale, and the fractured ledger of a defrauded neighbor is made completely whole. A terrified, bankrupt species stands at the edge of the courtyard, with totally empty hands, and the God of the universe swings the heavy wooden door wide open. And on a Friday afternoon outside Jerusalem, the final, staggering deficit of humanity is nailed to a wooden beam, and the king walks out of the tent to lay his own body on the grate. 5 ancient fires, 1 perfect covering, 1 God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the pitch on the wood of Noah's Ark. The kafar, the thick smear of resin that kept the dark, violent waters of death from breaking through the hull. For years, I read the book of Leviticus and saw a slaughterhouse. I saw a transactional, volatile deity demanding a violent bribe just to tolerate my presence. But the blood is not a price extracted by an angry judge. It is a protective seal provided by a merciful Father. If you are in a season where you feel completely exposed, where your failures, he is holding a bronze basin filled with fresh blood, standing next to a massive grate of blazing coals. They desperately needed a way to close that gap without dying. They needed a vocabulary for proximity, feel like a physical contagion. And you are exhausted from trying to pay off a spiritual debt you know you cannot afford. Leviticus is a place to sit. Stop trying to balance the scale. The Ola has already ascended. The Shelamim has already secured the peace. The sanctuary has already been desinned. You do not have to carry the heavy basin of blood anymore. If this shifted how you see the ancient text, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even 1 word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by the weight of their own performance. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. And may the God who designed a vocabulary for proximity just so he could dwell with a fractured people cover you with his peace, silence the demands of your ledger, and invite you to finally sit down at his table. Leviticus gives them 5 distinct words in that vocabulary, 5 specific offerings, 5 different mechanisms to repair the rupture between heaven and earth. To understand what is actually happening at the cross of Jesus centuries later, you have to understand the specific geometry of these 5 ancient fires. And the place to start is the very first instruction God gives from inside the tent. It is the most common offering in Israel's history. But the detail that changes everything hides in the smoke it leaves behind. We assume a sacrifice is defined by what dies. But the very first offering outlined in the Levitical text is not defined by its death. It is defined by its trajectory. The surrounding nations of the ancient Near East offered food to appease hungry, temperamental gods. The Babylonians and Canaanites left elaborate meals on stone altars, hoping their deities would eat and grant them favorable weather in return. But Israel's first sacrifice, detailed in Leviticus chapter 1, verse 3, operates on a completely different physical mechanism. A worshiper brings a flawless male animal, a bull, a sheep, or a goat, to the entrance of the meeting tent. The air around him is thick. It smells like roasting meat, burning hair, and crushed frankincense. And he is waiting for you to hand him the knife. He presses his hand firmly onto the animal's skull. He leans his full physical weight into the creature. The animal is slaughtered. The priest catches the warm blood in a basin and splashes it against the searing hot bronze of the altar. And then, something unique happens. Unlike the offerings we will look at later, where the meat is shared between the worshiper and the priest, this animal is not eaten. The entire animal is placed on the fire. The meat, the head, the fat, the internal organs. The heat of the bronze altar consumes everything until nothing remains but gray ash. The English Bible translates this as the burnt offering. The word translated burnt offering here is the Hebrew olah. It appears over 280 times in the Old Testament, and its etymology has absolutely nothing to do with fire, burning, or destruction. Its root is the Hebrew verb Allah, which simply means to ascend or to go up. A literal translation of Leviticus 1-3 would not be a burnt offering, but an ascending offering. It is the exact same verb used when Moses climbs Mount Sinai to meet God in the cloud. It is the same word used in Genesis chapter 22. When God tells Abraham to take his son Isaac up a mountain for an olah, this is the daily reality of the ancient tabernacle. A man brings a flawless bull from his herd. That route changes everything. When the ancient Israelite stands in the courtyard, their eyes stinging from the thick column of smoke rising into the desert sky, they are not watching God execute a punishment. They are watching a translation. The solid, heavy, earth-bound reality of the animal is being transformed by the fire into smoke so that it can pass into the invisible, heavenly realm of God. The fire is not a weapon of destruction. It is a vehicle of transport. The olah represents the entire, unreserved surrender of the worshipper's life. Nothing is held back. Nothing is kept for a later meal. It is a total, consuming dedication ascending to the Creator. It is the foundational sacrifice, the one that must burn on the altar continually, morning and evening, creating a permanent pillar of smoke, bridging the camp to the divine. The animal gives everything. But not every Israelite could afford a bull from the herd or a sheep from the flock, and the system was not designed to exclude the poor from the presence of God. The next offering requires no blood at all, yet it carries the exact same weight. A woman kneels in the dust. She rolls a heavy stone over grain. The husks break. The wheat shatters. A woman brings a handful of fine flour mixed with oil. A tribal leader brings a young goat. A destitute family brings 2 nervous pigeons. She pours out green olive oil. She mixes the dough with her bare hands. She crushes frankincense. She rubs coarse salt into the mixture. She walks to the bronze altar. Leviticus chapter 2 introduces an offering that requires no death, no knife, no blood. The English Bible calls it the grain offering, but the word used in Leviticus 2-1 is the Hebrew mincha. It appears over 200 times in the Old Testament, and its primary meaning has nothing to do with wheat or barley. The word mincha means a gift, a tribute, or an offering of allegiance given to a superior. When Jacob prepares a massive gift of livestock to appease his brother Esau in Genesis, the text calls it a mincha. When subject nations pay tribute to King Solomon, they bring a mincha. That definition shifts the focus entirely. The burnt offering gives back to God what God alone created, the breath and body of a living animal. But the grain offering gives back to God what human hands have cultivated. The plowing, the harvesting, the grinding, the pressing. It represents the daily, exhausting output of human energy. And the ingredients are fiercely regulated. No yeast can touch this dough, day after day, generation after generation. The courtyard operates less like a serene, quiet sanctuary and more like a loud, chaotic, and highly regulated butcher shop. No honey can be mixed in. In the ancient world, yeast and honey both cause fermentation. They cause the dough to swell, to sour, to eventually decay. They represent the puffing up of human pride. But the priest must add salt. Salt preserves. Salt stings. Salt endures. It is the ancient chemical signature of an unbreakable covenant. The priest takes a single handful of the oiled, salted flour. He throws it onto the burning coals. The frankincense melts. A new, sweet smell mixes with the thick smoke of the mourning animal. The rest of the bread is given to the priests to eat in the courtyard. When you bring a mincha, you are acknowledging that the strength in your hands comes from the throne of heaven. The mincha is not a cheap alternative to blood. It is the consecration of human sweat. The tribute goes up in smoke. The covenant salt crackles in the fire. But the altar is not merely a place to burn gifts for a distant king. Sometimes, the king insists on eating with you. Think about the last time you sat across a table from someone you had been deeply estranged from. The tension finally breaks. The bleating of animals waiting in line. The crackle of animal fat hitting hot bronze. The relentless, rhythmic splashing of blood against the base of the altar. You sit down together, You share a meal. You pass the bread. You hear the clinking of glasses. And you slowly let your guard down. There is a profound, universally human intimacy in eating food with another person. And Leviticus chapter 3 introduces an offering built entirely around that specific experience of communion. It is an offering that feels almost entirely out of place in a desert courtyard filled with blood and smoke. When you read Leviticus 3, you see the instructions for a worshiper bringing a flawless animal from the herd or the flock. But unlike the ascending offering where the entire animal is turned to ash, here, the altar only consumes the internal fat and the kidneys. The fire takes a specific portion. The priest takes the breast and the right thigh. But the rest of the heavy, roasted meat is handed right back to the person who brought it. The English Bible translates this as the peace offering or the fellowship offering. The word used in Leviticus 3:1 is the Hebrew shalamim. It is the plural form of a word you likely already know, shalom. We usually translate shalom simply as peace, but its ancient linguistic range of meaning is much wider and much heavier. The root of the word means wholeness, completeness, or a restored fabric of reality. It does not just mean the absence of conflict. It means flourishing, health, and absolute harmony. That root changes everything. When a worshiper brings this animal to the tabernacle, same dust, same smoke, same cycle, again and again. Most people assume the book of Leviticus is just a bizarre catalog of primitive violence. They are not desperately trying to appease an angry judge to avoid a punishment. They are not trying to bridge a terrifying gap. The Shilamim is not a plea for peace. It is the celebration that peace has already been established. If something about this language is shifting how you view the God of the Old Testament, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the ancient context than you knew was possible. So the worshiper takes the roasted meat back to their family. They sit down together, right there within the precinct of the sanctuary. They pull apart the hot roasted lamb. They taste the rich fat and the salt. They share the meat with their children, and they are commanded to share it with the poor. Because the Levitical rules require the entire animal to be eaten before morning. You cannot hoard this meat. You cannot save it for yourself. You must invite others to the table to finish it. For a fleeting, beautiful moment in the dust of the desert courtyard, the creator of the universe, the officiating priest, and the ordinary worshiper are all sharing the exact same meal from the exact same table. God is not just demanding your total surrender. He is inviting you to dinner. We skip over it in our reading plans because it feels archaic, unsettling, and completely disconnected from anything we experience today. But human wholeness is incredibly fragile, and we are remarkably skilled at breaking the peace we just celebrated. What happens when the table is shattered? What happens when a human being accidentally brings the dark contagion of sin into the sacred space? A man swears a false oath. He touches a decaying animal. He breaks a sacred boundary. He realizes his failure days later. An invisible contagion clings to his hands. He walks back to the tabernacle. Leviticus chapter 4 introduces a new mechanism. Up until now, the fires burned for surrender, for tribute, and for peace. But human failure demands a different kind of fire. God's absolute purity cannot coexist with human corruption. In the ancient Hebrew mindset, sin is not just a broken rule written on a scroll. It is a physical pollutant. It is an airborne toxic waste. It clings to the camp. It sticks to the sacred furniture. The English Bible translates this ritual as the sin offering. But look closely at the word God uses in Leviticus 4. Verse 2. It is the Hebrew word chatat. The primary root means to miss the mark, to fail, to fall short, but in the specific, intensive grammatical form used for this ritual. Chatat carries a counterintuitive action. It means to de-sin, to unsin, to actively purify,